From the heart of Nebraska's capital city, this is the Nebraska Family Alliance Report. Here's your host, Nate Groz.
Scandal, misconduct, and inaction in the face of rampant abortion clinic violations in Nebraska. I'm Nate Groz, Executive Director for Nebraska Family Alliance, and today we're shining a light on an issue that has been unfolding in our state that deserves a lot more attention, because it strikes at the foundation of the sanctity of life and our core mission at NFA, and it should never be allowed to happen. Disturbing information continues to come out about violations at Nebraska abortion clinics and a lack of action and accountability from the Nebraska Department of Health and Human Services. Nebraska State Senator Rick Holdcroft recently criticized DHHS for being too lenient on local abortion clinics at a committee hearing that was examining government oversight, or the lack thereof, of abortion providers in Nebraska. Matt Heffron, senior counsel for the Thomas More Society, provided expert testimony and exposed some glaring issues at this committee hearing, and he joins us now. Matt, thank you so much for being with us.
Nate, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for all the work you do at the Nebraska Family Alliance. It's a great organization. I'm always impressed when I see all the things that you guys are accomplishing.
Well, we're glad to help do our part. And, you know, there's a lot going on, but this issue in particular raises a lot of concerns, and is something I think we should be hearing a lot more about. And there's a lot to unpack here with this story. So first, Matt, can you help just sort of frame this a little bit for our listeners? What has been happening primarily at the notorious Carhart abortion facility in Bellevue? What type of violations and infractions have been occurring?
Well, you summarized it well to start, Nate. Basically, there's been a lot of violations, legal violations there, and they have been presented to HHS in a lengthy complaint, and HHS has done essentially nothing. So let me just go back quickly on some background. For a number of years, some of the sidewalk counselors in front of the abortion clinic down there have told me about this violation or that violation. And my response usually is, we'll send these complaints in, but you're probably not going to get a lot of response if it's just a one-off sort of thing. But when it arises to a critical mass, then we'll bring it all in a package. And it continued to happen, and that's exactly what we did. On May 16, 2024, I sent a 21-page complaint to HHS detailing just a myriad of Carhart clinic violations, and it was backed up by evidence, much of it documentary evidence, which was in the hands already of the HHS. We got this evidence, a lot of it, by open records requests. I also provided the listing of the laws that were violated, so people who got this didn't need to do a lot of work. It was just, in fact, some follow-up investigation. Most of these things, if not already proven by our complaint, were easily proven by a little bit of follow-up investigation. As far as we can tell, that of all of the 10 categories of violations that I gave them, listed in the 21 pages, they decided to investigate only one allegation. And as to that one allegation, they spent a single day down at the Carhart Clinic and found 229 violations in the 90-day period. And then you would think if you found 229 violations as to just one allegation, you'd do a lot more investigating. They did not. They closed the investigation within 3 days, and they imposed absolutely no penalties. Now, as to the one allegation that they found 229 violations of, the same thing had happened the year before. Complaints have been made that they were dispensing abortion drugs, misoprostol, without having the proper, what's known as dispensing practitioner pharmacy license. Basically, that means if you're a physician and you're giving out drugs, instead of sending somebody to a pharmacy, if you're a physician doing it, you have to have a particular pharmacy license. And so in 2023, they were found to be doing the same thing, handing out misoprostol without a pharmacy license. They were warned, and they were not penalized at all because they agreed not to do it again and they'd obey the law. Now, we happen to know that the day after the inspection in 2023, they were violating the same law again, the day after. And then starting in August of of 2023. That's when they started their 90-day run of 229 violations. And after the second time they did it, the second time they were caught, this time when they went for the inspection in 2024, again, HHS did nothing. And they said that they would not require anything more than a agreement not to obey the law again. I should say to add a little detail there. And they said the clinic also should have a second physician, a second abortion doctor, get a dispensing license as well as just the one, because at that time you only needed one for the whole facility. And lo and behold, as that one minor additional thing that they needed to do, they didn't do that either. And so what you find is that this clinic clearly does not care what HHS says, and HHS doesn't care. And that's what the hearing was about on the 16th of October this year. It was just to get out some of the facts of what's going on down there. And I will say there's lots of other violations as well that I'd like to discuss with you if you want me to.
Yeah. So, and I want to hear about some of that because, I mean, this is unconscionable. You mentioned that one violation of, I mean, we're talking about a dangerous chemical abortion-inducing drugs that, number one, and the life of an innocent child in the womb, but two, are also very dangerous to the health and safety of women. And there were hundreds and hundreds of violations where this clinic was dispensing chemical abortion drugs without a license or without a proper license. I mean, that is a serious violation. DHHS knew about it and essentially did nothing. But as you mentioned, that was one of just several problems. What else has been going on that came to light?
Sure. I mean, there's just so much, and that's why this is kind of an overwhelming complaint to be ignored. Here's another violation that they did. On at least 3 days in 2023, May 3rd, July 7th, and November 2, abortions were occurring without any abortion doctor having a license. Now, that's a Class 4 felony in Nebraska. If you commit abortions without having a license to practice medicine in Nebraska. And we know that, and this is where we had a little outside evidence, because our sidewalk counselors know the days when abortions are being committed down there, because you have a lot of patients coming in, and you have escorts. The escorts only show up to harass the pro-lifers on days that abortions are being done. And on 3 days, we knew that there was not a single doctor licensed to practice at that facility, and yet we know people were going in for abortions. So it's easy enough to go down and investigate that. Simply ask the clinic to show, what abortions were done on those days. And then you have all of these Class 4 felonies easily proved. They did not investigate that any further as far as we can tell. And I say as far as we can tell is because I've asked them repeatedly to explain themselves whether or not they are doing any more investigation. And ultimately they said, no, the investigation was done on the 26th. So we are presuming that their answer is no, that they did not investigate any of these. And I'm getting a little far afield here, Nate, but we also know that they are unwilling to talk any further about it, because Senator Holcroft invited them, in fact, asked them to send, first of all, Steve Corsi, the head of the HHS, to come testify and explain himself on the 16th during our interim study hearing. He refused. He said he's going to be out of town. And so Senator Holcroft then sent another request saying, well, then send whoever can talk about this, and particularly here a couple of names of people that we should think we'd like to talk to. And he was informed, no one's going to come. And so they have their opportunity to explain themselves. They're refusing to explain themselves. And quite honestly, we're hoping eventually this is going to get to an oversight committee, a legislative oversight committee, which is something new with Nebraska. But the oversight committee can subpoena witnesses, and they could then subpoena these HHS employees who did or failed to do the job, and maybe CEO Corsi himself. I've only explained one, and that was the 3 days when illegal abortions almost certainly occurred. We also have what I call a business model of serial patient safety violations, and that is Nebraska law requires that if you are doing an abortion, you have to stay, you have to be available for consultation within the state for 48 hours afterwards. Now, we know that none of these abortion doctors are available because they're all fly-in doctors. They fly in for a day of abortion, they leave the clinic and never come back until the next time that abortions are being done. They fly out again. And we know quite a bit about these doctors. They have the most horrendous records that you can imagine. One of them had several, or at least two, just horrendous malpractice suits against him. He lost his license and was in federal prison because he was violating Medicaid and Medicare laws. Another one has just the most grisly malpractice case against her. Another one, in fact, the one that they're now, actually had a national news article about him in which he described a number of things, including the fact that he told his patients, if you have to go to the hospital after one of these abortions, remember he's a flying abortion and he leaves, and he said, just don't tell them that you had an abortion. Tell them it's just a natural miscarriage. In other words, lie. He has told patients to lie. In this story, he also revealed that he carries a pistol at all times, even while in the operating room and while dealing with his patients. I mean, just these guys are just nightmares. And these are the doctors that are being flown in and flown immediately out in violation of the law. That's another one that'd be easy to look into, which they apparently did not.
Yeah, these are serious, alarming violations that raise a lot of questions. And so far, we have not gotten any real answers from DHHS. And so certainly there needs to be some serious reforms to ensure accountability and that our pro-life laws are being enforced. Because again, as you described, what is happening is abortion clinics, I mean, they're flying in abortion doctors from out of state to come dispense abortion drugs, and they were doing so hundreds of times without a license. That's what was happening in Nebraska. That can't be allowed to continue. There's so much that needs to come from this. And so I think it's critical that we continue to not only just talk about this, but also to encourage people to contact your state senator. Make sure that your representative knows that this issue matters to you and that you expect that DHHS would take proper response to these claims and violations to protect life and women and children in our state. That's what we're committed to. That's what we need to continue to work towards, to advance family, freedom, and life, and to create a culture of life in Nebraska. And I know that's the mission at NFA, and that's the mission at the Thomas More Society. So Matt Heffron, once again, Senior Counsel with Thomas More Society, thank you for being with us. And more importantly, thank you for your work to defend life and for investigating these claims and violations and making sure that our laws are being enforced here in Nebraska.
Sure. Nate, thanks very much for having me. And I'd like to just reinforce what you just said. The people who are listening to this cannot help more. I mean, the best way they can help is really sit down and write to your legislators, to your senators, as many as you can, because that's how they know this is important. Otherwise, this sort of issue could kind of gradually die away without much action. But if they know people are looking, it's really important for them to hear from their constituents. So people listening to this podcast could really help us out a lot by joining in and writing. So once again, thanks very much, Nate. I appreciate you for having us.
Thank you, Matt. And for more information to help advance family, freedom, and life, please visit NebraskaFamilyAlliance.org.